Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, you guys. Today is Finance Friday. Oh, why is this doing this? Okay, and we have a special topic today because we were going to talk about something, but in light of like everything that's happened, I went to an economic forum on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in light of all the shootings that are happening, it puts housing and oppression into numbers and charts. And I hear these economic forums all the time, and they want to talk about, they have these numbers about how Minneapolis is still really affordable compared to these other cities and stuff like that. But our people of color homeownership rates are the worst in the nation.
Yeah.
And now here we are, our police are publicly shooting African Americans and out of fear, which is strange. And then the city is actually, people after last summer, they thought for sure that the social unrest would cause people to leave Minnesota, which actually it did the opposite. And we've actually had a 3% increase in growth. And the luxury market is booming, and we got more cash buyers in here, and inventory's low, and there is something going on, and I feel like we have to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like all of it together, economy drivers, what drives the economy, what drives, just as you said, first-time home buyers, the difference between the housing gap, the education gap. There's so many different things that are prohibited, should I say, or prohibiting to, being able to build wealth within a family structure. And so it's a tough subject to a certain degree, and it's a subject that some people just don't even have to braze upon. Some people don't have to make it a part of their life. And so, but it is something that housing is a need, and it is something that education, whether it's trade school or whatever type of education one person would want to be able to further their self in life and have a piece of the American dream, which is deserving to anyone who wants it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that looks like, it's kind of what are those things that are kind of prohibiting certain people, certain classes, certain demographics of people to be able to obtain that. So,
yeah. Well, and just basic human needs, food, water, shelter.
Yeah.
Okay. And we need shelter. Shelter is healthcare. It's like being able to have that safe harbor, but also that launching pad.
Yeah.
Like does things for your prefrontal cortex,
Absolutely.
for example, and it gives you the ability to have true intellectual freedom, which, I'm a super big psychology nerd, and just having those, it reduces your risk of trauma, it reduces your risk of, addiction, it reduces your risk of all kinds of things. You go further in education if you have that safe place to be.
Yeah, or even come from, if you look at certain families, homeowners are homeowners. And so even if you look at the generational structures of homeowners, you're more likely to have a child if there's a parent who owns a home, their child will own a home.
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so forth, And so it's interesting, like first generation homeowner, first generation, like high school graduate, first generation college graduate, or whatever that looks like. The next generation more than likely will follow.
Mm-hmm. History and numbers, and let's go back in history to about 10 years ago when we were coming out of the recession, and the foreclosure crisis was happening, and investors such as Havenbrook Homes were buying. I think they have over 246 and I can put some articles and some stuff in the comments here. Bought up pretty much entire blocks of North Minneapolis, and then has become one of the biggest slumlords in the neighborhood. So they turned them into rentals. So they took what essentially could have been an affordable homeowner neighborhood and put it back into some form of oppression.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you'll even find now there are a lot of investors purchasing properties for people who aren't ready. We would consider it not to be ready. Maybe it's credit. Maybe at this time, it's really hard for people to purchase a home without a certain amount down, their own nest egg. Down payment assistance has to be listed normally on a PA, a purchase agreement.
Which, by the way, I think is a fair housing question that should not be on a purchase agreement. It should not matter where your down payment is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're not asking for closing costs from a seller. I think it goes back to, for me, and the way that I look at it, like you always have to strategize on how do you get around certain things, or how do you get around if there's things that are put in place, and it's not getting around them to kind of like cheat the system, but there's systems that get put in place that you can't be helped. Like most buyers aren't getting in with just the 3% down right now. And it's not a negative. I mean, building relationships is really important, right? But then also understanding what it means to budget. That's even more important. Understanding what it means to save. That's extremely important. Those are ways that you can kind of still obtain your goals, because I think the individual goal is what's important, and get what you need. Because there are going to be systems that are put in place. There's always going to be oppression. There's no nation that's been built without it. There's no, even within the mass corporate, you always have your worker bees, you always have your middle management, and then you have the 1%. There's always going to be those things, So how do you go about getting what you want in a space that's not created for the average person to get what they want, And how do you go about preparing yourself for being able to obtain what you want?
Yeah. I want to think about the other side of the coin, though.
Okay.
I want to talk about sellers and the kind of offers that they're accepting, and the fact that the only color we're allowed to talk about is green.
Yeah.
Because of fair housing. We're not even allowed to say fair housing has, age. We can't talk about race. We can't talk about familial status. We can't talk about sex. Disability. Yeah, we can't talk any of that. So, for example, case study, I have a woman who is is adopting some children. But she's by herself, one income. So now that and needing down payment assistance and things like that, it's like I can't appeal to the seller saying, hey, open your heart. Here's
Yeah.
my situation.
Yeah.
And those people are losing out to cash investors.
Yeah.
That are
And
like,
those investors,
no hassle, green money all the way, which are turning around and renting the
renting
home.
it out. Yeah.
And
Or overpriced, like way overpriced. And they're doing, I mean, I could get into it, like these rent to own programs. And then the buyer or the rent to own, the kind of, what would you call it, hoop dream or whatever, then not able to afford that because if you're paying too much in rent,
yeah,
then you're not going to be able to save. It's
oh,
not going to be enough in your budget, to save. And so then when it comes time to purchase that home, have you been able to get yourself in a place to be able to actually buy? No.
I'm going to speak to all the real estate agents out there that are coaching their clients, that are doing these off-market investor sales to other people, to other friends and portfolios that are buying up all these like rental properties in an affordable price point, anything below 300,000. If we want to end like mass incarceration, for example, are putting a lot of African Americans in prison, right? And then they're left with a one-person income, and doing that plus daycare and childcare plus working full-time just to be able to have a basic place to call home. But you can't do that. Like, we are not able to help the people that need help in the current systems and bad dealings that are happening. And they're happening so bad here in Minnesota that we are, like I said, one of the worst. I think we're number 48 in people of color home ownership. The only place that are worse than us are the Dakotas, and that's because their population is like this.
Yeah. I think our number is like 7%, or maybe even less, for people of color who own homes here. But there are things that you can do. Such things as it may take you a little longer, right? But say there's two family members that are income earners, young family members, right out of high school, or maybe, you can put their incomes together and you can qualify that way. You can get gifts from family members to put a larger down payment down. You know what I mean? There's things you can do to get property, to get land. And that's what's important, I think, is strategizing around how to build generational wealth within your family.
Well, okay, so segue to that. If someone is selling as a real estate agent, or if you are a white advocate, you can educate your clients on investing is not a protected class. You do not have to sell to somebody who's not going to homestead the property. Mm-hmm. You can ask them if they're going to be investing the property or if they're going to be living in the property. That is not a protected class. And we can help talk if we want to be the people that help you guys and the community as a whole take part in this home ownership and this generational wealth and reparations. Then we need to start talking about it. We need to start educating people on what is really going on politically, what is really going on underlying all these homeowners and these investment groups and these, and sales. People they want the most money for it, but they also want their community. And right now, you can't have one without the other type situation. So being educated in asking who's going to homestead this property. investing is not a protected class, you guys. You do not have to sell your house to an investor. You can sell it to a homesteader.
You don't have to sell your house to an investor, but you also can start your own investment groups.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to sell. Sellers, listing agents, sellers don't have to sell their homes to investors, but people can start their own investment groups. And so, and then you can choose to who you sell to and how you sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are, to me, some ways that you can also go about obtaining kind of what you need or hitting those goals.
We have to bring the affordability back to home ownership. And I think that we have to talk about building more affordable homes. And with these lumber tariffs right now are causing prices to just skyrocket.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's funny because we have a really large nation here.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of forests. And yes, there's a lot of protected things, but forests, you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so you can see that there are some areas where, like what's that Pacific, I'm thinking of the name of the big logging company. They grow trees like a crop.
To be harvested, yeah.
To harvest.
Interesting. So there's I've kind of been looking into the whole container home thing, which is super interesting. It's super sustainable. And I mean, there's so many kind of new innovative things out there, a friend of mine bought some land in North Minneapolis a few years ago. I don't think he paid that much for it at all. And it's worth a whole lot right now, and he's a person of color. And he can choose to do what he wants with that land, build on it, or sell it. But I think those are really important things, is to really kind of, I also have another friend who, she owns a home and a developer wants to buy it. And it's just sitting on a piece of land that a developer wants, which is kind of interesting in itself. But she's like, then I'll have enough cash to buy a multi-tenant property and I'm going to be a landlord. And so those are also ways that you can kind of say your truths to power, be the truth to power, is by kind of, one, educating yourself around what's going on, not just saying I can't do this because, but really find out how to go about doing what you really want to do. Taking on a role of being a landlord, that's a responsibility, but she's looking at it as being able to add a value, And so I think that that's extremely important, because then you become the person in power. And then you become the person that can be, and then you become a value to your community,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we're running long here. I love talking about fair housing and stuff, and how sometimes I feel like it binds my hands and I can only do so much. And, with the student loans, even if they've done everything right, they're still bound by the weight of student loan debt and down payment assistance. And it's becoming.
And that all goes back to the puzzle, right? You have student loans. If you're getting an FHA loan, normally if your credit score is not high enough to go conventional, then you have to use 1% of that student loan. If you've got $100,000 in student loans, say you needed to use your student loans to for living expenses or whatever that looked like, or you chose to go to an alternative type of school, then you paid more for school, then you're using 1% of $80,000. It's $800 a month. That's a car, not a car note. That's a house. That's just the principal and interest a lot of times in a home. And so there's not really a lot of ways around that, right now, but there are things that you can kind of speak to in student loan forgiveness and things like that. But I think those are some of the topics in home buying education that are really, really important that we don't kind of dig down into enough, because it becomes a hard stop.
Yeah. Well, and then you throw in one child and you've got daycare. You got two working adults. Now you got daycare, which I have paid at a center like over $1,200
a month.
A month.
Yeah.
And then I was self-employed, so I paid $1,200 a month in medical.
Oh.
And then, and I don't have student loans, but you add student loans on top of that, it sucks the affordability out of life. Like it's just, you're trying to do the right thing and everything you do is capitalized.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be a downer, you guys, but this is one of the things that I want to talk about, especially when it comes, I love investing and I love it that people invest, but we need to turn around these neighborhoods. And if we want to turn around these neighborhoods, then we have to do it through the power of home ownership and education and not.
And I think too, like, what we can go on and on and on, and I absolutely
20 minutes. We've been talking for 20 minutes.
I know. We can keep going, but it's like you're saying I love investing, and that may be a way for some people to get into their first home, and then it creates affordability for you to want that bigger home or whatever you really want. Is by purchasing a multi-tenant property. Are there a lot of them out there on the market? No, but does there seem to be? I feel like there's a way into those outside of just like a single family home, Yeah.
I've seen some FIGs. They're called fourplex investment groups where four people go in and they buy a fourplex or they build a fourplex together and then they sell it and split the profits, so you're not going in all on your own. Like you guys can pool your money together and then, if you wanted to live in it, for example, all four of you guys put your money in, you build it, and then you got,
you're paying a quarter of a mortgage versus, so it's like, what are your long-term goals? How are you gonna, what are they? And so I don't think at this point, anyone should necessarily be, if you just want a single family home and that's what you want to do, if it's not something that you're able to obtain right away, what are other options around you really being able to build wealth? Because that's what people use real estate for. And I think that's where you can kind of get around and educate yourself. No one has to go to college to get into real estate. No one has to buy a property. You do not have to have a degree. To sell a property, you don't either. And to make a profit, all you've done is made a profit at that point, So I think that's a really good topic that we should kind of dig more into, because say you do buy a duplex or go into an opportunity like what you're speaking to, and then 2 years down the road, you've saved a year's worth of income. What does that do for your life? So how are you looking at things differently to pivot upon the structures that are put in place?
Absolutely. Or, even just climbing the ladder, starting with a condo and then selling it and moving into something bigger, and just rolling everything up, and it can
I don't
help.
think we talk about like that enough in home buying. I think the home buying class is, you just talk about like your first purchase and you'll live there for 5 years and you can get, down payment assistance, or you need this much down or however, but the whole wealth piece to it, it should become an interest to people because people are really taking this industry per se and really building a life off of it, and I think that educational piece is so removed from what a lot of people know. And it's a big driver when it comes to money.
It's so true. I mean,
Affordability, you know.
our former president, if you've read any biographies or anything about how his family was started, was, his dad like grew up started building like garages.
Wow.
Like or his grandfather did. And like it was just like little things, like building little tiny things, and then they make their way up. And then so I mean, we don't even want to get into that, but you could life is different now, and we could talk about rolling things uphill all day, but we got to go. It's Friday. We've been on for 25 minutes already.
It's a good talk. And I think talking about disparities is important. It's horrible. I think it's extremely important to talk about gaps. They exist, but it's also, and then, not to brush over, it's a visual disparity to see what's going on as far as like in the news with, like you said, the police killings and stuff. That's heart-wrenching. That takes a lot out of people daily to see that, and have to continue to go on and act like that's not there. We don't live in a video game. We're real human people, that have feelings. And one of our customers couldn't handle it on Monday, was just heartbroken. And it's extremely heartbreaking. I have a son who's 25, and I couldn't imagine him being taken away from me in any other way than a natural cause,
Oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. I'm going to start crying.
Yeah. But I think there's also things that we can speak to that are, that can build us up, build people up, that can give you strategies, that can help develop community when it comes to home buying. And that's a part of reasons why I do what I do. And I'm glad to be on a team with you too.
I'm like, I want to help people so much. And sometimes you feel so helpless. And then, there's a lot of family members that tout these horrible statements and these horrible, idioms that that happen, and I can't handle it anymore. And I want to help people, and I need to help people. And I think that this show was a way for me to talk about home ownership and education and safe harbors. And like I said, like I when I started going into real estate, I still own a house in North Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Like people, when they talk about it, I'm like, you've never even lived there. Like you have no idea what it's like to live there. I love it. And I would live there again and again and again. Were there problem people? Yeah. But there was problem people in South Minneapolis, like
even in the suburbs, it's everywhere. There's problem people everywhere, and there's community everywhere. And it's really about what you bring, And I think that, like you're saying, I want to help people. I think if more people kind of took that upon themselves to help themselves and then reach back and help someone else, then you would have a chain of help, and then people would start to help themselves more. Mm-hmm. And then they could reach back and help somebody else. And then, that's to me how you create change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Wait, 30 minutes. I have to go. I got a Zoom meeting. I can't be crying for a Zoom meeting. Well, it went on too long. Okay. I got emotional.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome. Okay, you guys. I'll see you next Friday, and I'll be on Monday with Henry Poling, and we will be talking about purchasing a second home. So people that are doing cabins, investment properties, or if they have a job in a separate city that they work in part-time, then, there you go. Okay, we'll talk later.